What's up, guys? I'm trying something new this tier that I kind of always wanted to do back in like Eternal Palace and BOD and Crucible. That's reviewing my VODs from my stream of various boss kills and kind of going through decision making, my thought process, my talents, my essences, all that kind of stuff. And I think the big reason I wanted to start doing this is because we get a lot of questions in like the Paladin Discord stream about like, hey, how do I use my cooldowns here? Do you have any tips for these fights? So I feel like video guides explaining what I did, like tips I have, or mechanics that should look out for might be pretty beneficial to like the Holy Paladin or healing community in general. So hopefully this helps. All right, we're gonna be looking at the traits, talents, trinkets, essences, all that I use for Mythic and Doth. Starting off looking at the essences, obviously you're gonna run one Vision of Perfection Major and Conflict and Strife Minor. Those are probably our two most stable essences. But after that, it gets a bit interesting. So I ran well in from Void, and the main reason I ran these two is because throughout the entire fight, they provided me value, right? But the problem with Unwavering Ward, which is kind of another staple essence that we used on a lot of other fights, is that you're not really that stacked in the fight. For the first 6 or 7 minutes, you're in small groups of 10 people, and you're constantly spread out from those 10 people. So you're not really always going to be able to stack the shield, which also provides the DR from the Unwavering Ward Minor, and you can't really get full value of it until late in the fight, which is like the 7 to 13 minute mark. There is an argument to be made that because the 7 to 13 minute mark is probably it's still like a good portion of the fight, and it's still a very difficult portion of the fight. Like the DR and the absorbs it gives during that part of the fight is really valuable and is worth it overall. But like I said, I just looking at the 0 minute mark to the 13 minute mark, I felt like well and Formless Void just gave me the most value entire time instead of just in the last 6 minutes. That is definitely something though that I think you could make a respectable argument. Looking at the corruption, I ran the Marcoa, which was a flash of insight weapon. Intellect's obviously not great for us, but I think the big reason that I decided to run this was just because I didn't have a lot of other corruption gear, and its HPS per corruption is still pretty solid. Like it's just raw efficiency is good. On top of that, I ran Ineffable Truth Tier 1 offhand at 460 is just a BOE I bought. Ineffable Truth is, I think, by far one of our best corruptions. I think it's really, really strong, and I think you're definitely going to want to have around 80% of it. The way it works is that it doesn't increase its proc chance with more pieces, but it increases the amount your cooldowns are reduced by. So with 2 pieces of Tier 1, it's going from 30%, it's going to go to 60%. Like a Tier 2 and a Tier 1, you're going to go from make it to 80%. So I ran that, and then on top of that, I ran my gloves. There is another BOE that I bought, and I ran that with Tier 2, which would give me 80%. The reason I like 80% is it because it like the GCDs felt a lot smoother than when I was at like 60%. So I have another BOE that's 10%. I mean, sorry, a Tier 1 corruption. So I could run the Tier 1 or I could run the Tier 2. I ended up running the Tier 2 just because the GCDs felt smoother. And it felt a lot more like natural play. On top of that, I ran Infinite Stars Bracers. This is really not a slot that I was happy with, but I didn't have anything else to run. I'm at 30 corruption right now with a rank 12 cloak. So I needed to put something on, right? I had 30 or I guess 29 pretty much corruption resistance I couldn't be using. So I had no other slots with corruption just because of the way my gear turned out. So I ran the Tier 1 Infinite Stars. What I could have done is I could have used my Mythic Bracers and ran like a small corruption like these Crit Strike Boots or, like a Mastery proc. And if I had a Haste proc, I probably would have ran that instead, but I just didn't have that. And on top of that, I have a very low amount of Leech. And Leech, while it's generally a pass stat, I think it's very good on a fight like Inzoth because of the raw amount of damage you take. And it's very often that you feel like you're in danger. Like, I need heal. And I think Leech is very good on that fight. So I ran 2 Leech pieces instead of running the Mastery proc, and then I just ran my Infinite Stars Bracers instead. Looking at my trinkets, for the rank 12 cloak, I was running Claw just because it gave me a lot of mana return and it gave me a lot of extra damage. It is, I think, very strong in Inzoth, and I think you're definitely going to want to consider it when going through progress. But for me, just the way I played, I maximized my mana and I tried to play around my mana well, and I feel like I was able to do that so that I was able to run two like just HPS trinkets instead of having to run mana return trinket. I will say though that the Dragon Claw, or I guess Obsidian Claw, gets a lot of value if you need Psychus damage, just because you use it when Psychus is at 9 stacks and it's just going to destroy him, right? But for us, we didn't really have Psychus damage issues, and before the Cloak upgrade, we had damage issues, but once we get the Cloak, our damage is through the roof. We don't really have damage problems. So instead of running the Claw, I ran for more HPS just for more safety. For my Azerite, I ran the Engineering Helm. I never really got the Inzelf Helm off Heroic. I still don't have it, and it's 6 weeks into the tier, 5-6 weeks. I ended up rolling for like Lockjaw Shoulders, which would give me my Hates Decree trait. I think this is something that I would not recommend to most people. I don't think you should roll for heroic items. I rolled for heroic items because the level I play at kind of required me to do this so that I could at least try to get a upgraded Lights Decree trait, um, without having to like roll 4 times for a mythic, not even 4, 2 times for a mythic piece and just not getting it, and then being stuck with like a low item level lockjaw piece, which would be like 445, or running a different trait like a Breaking Dawn. Breaking Dawn definitely was really good this tier, but it wasn't. I don't think it was better than Lights Decree on a fight like Inzo. So you definitely want a Lights Decree trait. You could get a Breaking Dawn, I think it would be good. Like for example, I would much rather prefer to have a Breaking Dawn like trait in my helmet, a Lights Decree and Avengers Might. But I don't know, if I had an Avengers Might helmet, I might have ran that instead of Lights Decree. I mean, Breaking Dawn. And then obviously I ran the Vexiona chest, which just gives me like it's just pure since light chest with your just might. Part of corruption is very interesting in the sense that it provides a bigger damage increase just because its secondary stats like haste, crit, verse is all going to increase your damage, whereas the mastery provided by Avengers Might provides 0 DPS increase. But because this is a like healing intensive fight and we killed it with the cloaks, that secondary stats I don't think are as valuable as the raw mastery given during your wings, where you just want to blast healing. For talents, you're basically going to be wanting to run this setup. Obviously, Crusaders Might. Um, Blinding Light is super good on this fight just because you can use it to cancel the Psychophage's cast, which is going to be really handy. There's a lot of times you think you might get hit or you're worried you're going to get hit where you can just pop this ability and then not only save yourself but save your raid members. This is pretty much a staple for this fight. Devotion Aura, obviously. The rest of the talents actually are pretty normal, but Unbreakable Spirit and Rule of Law is something that kind of gets changed depending on the fight. And on this fight, there is a point later on in about 8 minutes in the fight where you're going to have to use your immunity to soak, and you're also going to have to do it later on in the fight about 11 minutes or 12 minutes, somewhere around there. Somewhere it's going to line up so that without this trait you don't have 2 bubbles, but using this trait you get 2 bubbles, pretty much like Zakul if you were running Aura of Sacrifice. You just need this trait so that your bubbles up to immune soak. If you are a guild not have you immune soaking, or they only have you immune soaking once, I would definitely run a rule. So we're taking a look at a Mythic and Zoth guild, just basically going through my thought process, my decision making, everything like that. I'm not going to sit here and say I play it perfectly or my wings timings are perfect, but I tried to use my wings in spots where my guild needs them, whether it be for DPS, just points where we're lacking healing, anything like that, right? So starting off, you'll see I pre-position on the side with the badge I'm assigned to. Obviously, you're going to be on this spot or you're going to be on another spot depending on where your guild assigns you. I open with wings instantly. The main reason is because I want to use it in the Psychus phase downstairs. So using it on pull allows me to do that and not miss a use. Not to mention there's a very early Eternal Torment, which is like the main AoE damage spike in this fight. So I have a full ramp as well as having 10-15 seconds of wings. Unfortunately here, because of the way the paranoia happened, I was not able to hit the boss. And one of the big things on this fight to maximize your HPS is hitting the boss, just so you can constantly Crusader Strike even when there's no tentacles available. But the person I got paired to was not really in a good spot for us to both run to the boss after finishing our tentacles. And with Paranoia, I'll say that generally, and most of the time, most people come to me. I always look to see if there's people if like I need to run to them. But in this case, I saw that I got linked to our rogue. Our rogue will normally just shadow step the boss or shadow step to one of us, and we'll be fine. So I'm not able to get to the boss, so I can't Crusader Strike here. Just kind of unfortunate. You might see me try to inch forward here. Yep, I inch forward there to get the Crusader Strikes off. Just healing us up before the tentacle spawns, so I don't miss any GCDs. Basher Tentacle spawns, normal rotation. After this, you'll see me go down to the Psychus phase. The Psychus phase I have is pretty easy. In most cases, your guild's going to have you solo heal it, I think, just because there's very little healing, and it's very important here to like, I mean, A, just don't let people die, that's obvious, but B, try to maximize your damage, and you'll see me here use wings for DPS. So we get down there. The first thing I do is I hit this synapse early just so I can get my Crusader Strikes off so like I can heal people up before I actually get to targets closer. Instead of running the boss here, I go to the next synapse just because there's a lot of ads over there, the psychophages, and if you get hit, you lose a shit ton of sanity, and you're pretty much dead if that happens. So I come to the synapse, and I just use that to get my holy shucks off. Healing here is a bit sketchy until you get your wings, just because even though the healing is like pretty low, you're the only one down there, right? So you're responsible for keeping people alive, and the probe mines that the synapses do still hurt a shit ton. Sometimes you're gonna have to flash with light spam if people are dying. You'll see me here, just starts putting me flash of light. I got a good proc, which allow me to keep people safe until I want to wings. I hold wings here a bit. And the main reason I do this, there's some paladins that don't do this, like Nori from Limit, I don't think does this. I think Nori uses his wings instantly. I hold mine because my group was having damage issues with Psychus for a while, so I felt it's better just try to min-max it so I got as much uptime with the high stacks that Psychus gets from the synapses. So I hold wings here, and I like to use it right at these flame start just for healing purposes. Just because this is like where the main damage comes from, so just having wings makes it feel pretty safe, while also obviously giving as much uptime with as many high stacks as possible. I normally have to sack my tank here, and sometimes if I feel like I'm taking extra damage, I'll use my defensive, just because flames is the AoE that happens obviously in sack. Get fucked up sometimes. So right here, I'm just spamming DPS GCDs and Holy Shocks into the Psychus. You'll see me heal people here who might get low. For example, I think I hear our Boomkin here, yep, because he was low and flames are starting. We ended up near the end of prog being pretty far ahead in damage, so I didn't really feel the need to do as much, and we often had to stop DPS or hold DPS just so the push timings were better. Once we get here, I just pump DPS into the boss for the most part, I think. Actually, I did not. On prog, I would mainly, or a very early prog, I was just pumping GCDs in the boss, but we killed this post-nerf where damage wasn't really a concern. Like, for example, before getting the cloak, I was using Claw, but once we got the cloak upgrade, which is rank 12, I believe, we didn't have as much damage issues, so I took off the Claw, which is going to give me just more healing increases, but I obviously lose the mana return and the damage. I think Claw is definitely a good alternative if you need Psychus damage, or if you need mana, because mana can definitely be pretty intense in this fight, even though we're paladins. So right here, I just look for my Paranoia partner. Something I try to do here is I try to get to the boss as soon as this happens, just so, because this tentacle likes to die, and there's a torment that happens as soon as these tentacles die, these Basher tentacles. So if you don't get close to the boss, you're not going to be able to melee anything, so you're not going to be able to get your Crusader Strike charges. So I try to like signal to my partner by inching over there that, hey, like, I want to go to the boss because I want a Crusader Strike. And a lot of people get to realize that I want to do this eventually. You'll see my partner follow me here. And I also hold wings here. And the reason I do this is I hold it for this Eternal Torment and also for the one after this. And I use it on the first GCD here of this. As soon as we take the first take of Eternal Torment, I wings. And I think a big thing about this is that I obviously don't get a full ramp for this, but you'll see what happens later, which I think is super high value for areas that we needed healing, like my guild personally needed healing. So what I like to do here is I like to sit in the middle of the two groups. On my left side of my character right now, there's my group, and on the right side there's the other group. The Basher Tentacles here are close enough that if you stand on the boss, you're going to be able to reach both groups. And if you don't stand on the boss and you stand on like the Basher Tentacles, you can't reach the other group. Generally, with the strategy we ran, I had to immune soak twice in this fight, so I could not run Rule of Law, and I had to run Unbreakable Spirit. And without Rule of Law, your range is limited, right? So I choose to sit on the boss here, or sometimes I'll sit on Corruptor Tentacles or Spike Tentacles that are around the boss so I can hit targets while also reaching both groups. And this Wings will carry over to this next Eternal Torment that happens in 10 seconds. I had a Wings proc here, which is pretty big. I had 2 Wings procs. You'll see me kind of going left and right trying to find targets that might be out of my range, because sometimes if Corruptor Tentacles spawn bad, people will be out of range. Main reason I like the Wings here is just because my group had issues with the healing. Like if the second Mind Gate group would sometimes go down at really low health, so I like to hold this Wings to kind of help them get healthy before they go downstairs in a phase that's a lot more healing intensive. And that just allows me to help top them off while they're saving their cooldowns for the downstairs phase. Not to mention, it lines up super well with a very healing intensive part in about a minute. So right here, another Eternal Torment. You can't really do much here, which is unfortunate. I just try to look for low HP targets, and I try to either Crusader Strike off the boss or Spike Tentacles along the way towards the next Basher Tentacle. I Aura Mastery here, and the reason I do it is for that Eternal Torment, just because I don't need it, and I might as well reduce some of the damage taken, and it comes up later in the fight when I actually do want it. You could get in use of it early on in the fight. In hindsight, looking back, I probably should have used my Aura Mastery on the very first set of Cataclysmic Flames in the downstairs phase, but honestly, it just doesn't really matter that much, so I never really thought about it. That's definitely something I could have done better, though, in hindsight. So here we get Neurons. What I like to do is I like to just pick a Neuron with not a lot of people near it, and I just like to start Crusader Striking it so that I can get my Holy Shocks up. That one had no one near it. You can be pretty patient here. Like, your damage that you take from Paranoia doesn't really start ticking or really hurting until later in the cast, so you can be pretty patient about waiting to get to your partner. Make sure here that when you're doing this, you just line up correctly and you don't go with any synapses, or not synapses, sorry, neurons. So I winked instantly coming out of this, and this pull didn't line up that way because I accidentally Holy Avenger late, but I would also Holy Avenger instantly here. The reason why is that we have an Eternal Torment coming out in 7 seconds, and generally on prog we were at like 25 to 50% HP. Like, people were in a lot of danger, and we had a major raid spike happening, and our Shaman didn't have any cooldowns, right? So my wings needs to be very quick, and I need to get people in like safe health very quickly. So I'll HA and I'll use my wings instantly. I like to get to this Basher, but getting to this Basher is kind of difficult sometimes because there's a lot of Psychophages out. So if I can't get to it, or I think it's too dangerous, you'll see me sometimes miss GCDs or hit like Spike Tentacles or Corruptor Tentacles. And once you get everyone topped off, it's not that big of an issue, but you definitely don't want to be caught by a Psychophage. And it gets pretty scary here. So I'm kind of just trying to stay max range, waiting for the Torment to come out. I use HA, and I'm just trying to get as many GCDs out as quick as possible. As soon as I top everyone off here, it's pretty safe, but that was just an issue we had trouble with healing, so I like to pair my wings up with that, and it lines up pretty well in the fight too, later on. I'm staying max range so I don't get hit by the Psychophages. Here I run to the boss early just because you obviously can't be hitting Psychophages. You're just going to get killed that way, and they're all over the Corruptor Tentacle, so I might as well go to the boss early. So the second Psychos group just came up. Something you could do here is you could walk around the boss early to get in position to heal them. And something is, you will sometimes, depending on your push, you will get an Eternal Torment here, which is the major raid-wide damage. If you do get that, you just have Crusader Strikes out of the boss and you just heal the best you can. So right here, I'm just pumping a couple Holy Shocks into the boss just for a bit more boss damage. Boss damage is definitely super important in every phase of this fight, so if you can squeak any out just by dropping Consecrates, doing Judgments, maybe even running an Infinite Stars piece. For example, I obviously ran a wrist piece with just tier 1 Inflammable Stars because I had extra Corruption to wear. I was only wearing 10, so I slapped on my wrist, and that gave me a bit more boss damage. even if it isn't super fantastic on this fight. So here, generally, like, my wings isn't up, but that's because of ineffable truth. Depending on like how good or how bad I get procs with ineffable, I pretty much the earliest I would use it is right here as we take this damage from this Harvest Thoughts. You'll see me holding my GCDs so that as soon as it comes up, I don't miss a Holy Shock GCD. Or sometimes if it comes up late, I'll just use it as soon as it comes up. But I don't use it until we take that damage. So here we're going to have to run out. It's not ideal for your GCDs, and I don't even think it's probably your best case or the best area to use your cooldowns. But for me and for what my guild needed, it felt the best just because, A, it gives a strong throughput in this area, and it also puts it on cooldown, right? So we can get more uses later on in the fight. But with some of these wings, you're just going to have to find out what works best for your guild. And for you, that might mean saving the swings for like 45 seconds so you can use it on the second Evoke Anguish. So I keep everyone top tier for this beam, and as soon as the beam's done, my wings is starting to fade. And we'll get SLT coming out with the Anguish to kind of make sure no one's super low HP with the Anguish. Tops us off instantly, and I'm kind of just looking for targets to heal. They might be a bit low. I stand in melee here. This was kind of just an assigned spot so that I could always Crusader Strike the boss. Generally, your guild will have your Holy Paladin to do that. Get as close to the boss as they can. So as soon as you get this, you get a Paranoia. Generally, it's okay to take a bit of ticks from this Paranoia just because you have so much sanity. So, and it's clusterfuck. Like, you don't have that much room. There might be a lot of people in melee. You might have to run through people quickly. And I don't know what I did on this pull. So this pull, I got my Demon Hunter, who was in the back, dropping off an Evoke Anguish, and he just leapt to me instantly. So it wasn't that bad. And I'm kind of just making sure we have room. Going to the back because that's where it was pulling us. If you're not very careful about your position, you can really get pulled into the Anguish here, which is just going to kill you pretty much instantly unless you health pot instantly. So you have to make sure you just try to squeeze out as much room as you can if the people behind you aren't giving you room, which is what I just did. I got max range. So it's my next spot for Evoke Anguish. I devo instantly here for this Evoke Anguish. This is probably the hardest Evoke in the fight, I feel like. So we used Aura Mastery, we used Healing Tide, and we used Rallying Cry just for this. And our other Paladin had wings here, and that's something that you're going to have to figure out with your guild. With our Paladin going down in the second Psychers group, he was able to also have wings up at this point in the fight right here. Whereas I couldn't, so we're kind of just we're naturally spreading out our cooldowns and giving a good spread. Like, our healing actually felt really good in this fight. We didn't have much issues where we were in danger. One thing to note, though, is that because you can't play Rule of Law, there's going to be a lot of people out of your range here, which is just going to feel really bad, and you might have to, like, let your other healers know, your, like, Resto Shamans, your Disc Priests, your Resto Druids, let them know, like, hey, I'm out of range of these people, like, you guys got to have an extra eye on the people in the very back. So right here is my first immune soak. There's nothing really special about that. You just get in it. Actually, I will say, you want to immune at the you don't want to immune instantly. You want to immune at the back half of the cast so that you also immune the evokes. And immuning the evokes just means obviously you don't get it on you, right? And that's big because you can stand wherever the fuck you want at that point. Something I like to do here is with this beam goes right, and depending on its spawn, you can save yourself a lot of time. So I kind of get out of melee and I cheat left here. And I'm looking for this beam spawn because if this beam spawns on me or slightly to my left, I can move to the left into the evokes, or where the evokes are being dropped off, and I don't have to run with the beam. So right here, this beam, I didn't feel comfortable with. I probably could have skipped it, but I didn't feel comfortable with it, so I charged it to the right so I didn't get hit by it, and I was just in a good position. So this wings is not going to be good. It's not high value, but it's at least putting it on cooldown. And my job isn't to do a shit ton of HPs. My job is to do whatever it takes to kill the boss, right? And I'm still kind of blasting at this point in the fight, too. So it's not like my cooldowns are super bad. For this Paranoia, it happens during a beam, or a beam happens after it, so you kind of have to get with your partner quickly. And we had a rule where if you were a melee player and you got linked with a range, there was like a warlock or something, and not like a mage, you would go out to them. Or like a shadow priest. If you got linked with a mage would blink to you. If you got linked to a demon hunter would get to you. Like, generally the high mobility classes get to the low mobility classes unless it's like a melee and like a warlock. So I move out so that I'm not on top of other people and I'm giving our melee DPS high uptime. on the boss so we can push boss damage as much as possible. So see me here, I realize I get linked with Dan, by the way, who is our rep Paladin. I make the decision that, hey, I want to get to him, obviously, because he's trying to DPS the boss. I want to be in melee, win-win. And what we also do here is we try to cheat to the right. This beam is going to our left, so we want to be as far right as possible to give us as much room as possible to make the decision, do we want to go left of this beam or do we want to go right of this beam when we see it spawn? So we see it's on our left. We know it's a good beam for us. We don't really have to move. But however, we see people on our left who also want to be right of this beam, right? So we have to keep making room for them despite the fact that we're already in a safe spot. And you'll see our entire guild kind of shift to the right to give them room. So after this, it's pretty much simple for the rest of this phase, which is only going to be like another minute or so, if even that. You kind of just got to make sure that the Thought Harvesters are killed on time, but that's not really your job. You just try to target the... obviously spot heal low health people. Sometimes your tanks might call for like externals here or even bops just because of the tank debuff. So I'm standing in this. This is not going to go off. I just want to make sure those die. And I'm back on the boss. My assigned spot for the for my neck was to use it here. Your guild might have you do disarms or might have you do it earlier. Generally, I don't think you want healers doing disarms because that means that DPS had to use necks right here, where this, instead of using the neck, they could have been DPSing the boss. So you want healers using necks so the DPS can get as much uptime on the boss as possible. Some guilds have these necks happen in the secret phase. We didn't do that. We had the necks being used here. Just whatever your guild decides to do. So in this phase, I could obviously sit there and still pad heal and finish the fight at 120k HPS, but that's not what my guild needed, right? My guild was having issues with damage on this ad, so you'll see here that I spend almost every single GCD just destroying this ad. But before I do that, I'm topping everyone off because within 6 seconds of getting here, there's massive raid AoE, so everyone needs to be full HP. And it's very important you top people here very quickly. So everyone was full HP, we're good. I'm kind of just holy shocking the boss now, and I like to move far for this. Dark Matter was a mechanic that I feel like I struggled with more than I should have. I died to it twice, and it's really an easy mechanic. The big thing is you have to have space, and you have to be confident in which way you want to go. And I kind of didn't have that, and I made 2 mistakes with it. So I just decided, hey, I don't really need to push, if someone wants to sit on the ad, it should definitely be the melee DPS and not me. Especially because we're running a heavy melee DPS comp. So I move out early to give our melee DPS room, and also for my own personal sake to make sure that I know that I'm not going to get hit by this because I have a lot of room to run. So you'll see me in the back of the room, just spamming holy shocks and judgments into the thing. I look from a top-down perspective so I can just see where they're dropping. I try to stay away from them. Their hitbox is bigger than what it looks like. Keep that in mind. You generally also want to stay away from the walls. It can be kind of tricky with the walls, and that can get you trapped in. When you're not dodging that, you want to be under the Void Spawn Annihilator, just so that Annihilates can be taken to the sides. You are going to need to heal your tanks here because they get a Healing Absorb debuff. I don't really track that because I didn't think it was that important. What I would do is I would just target a tank when they called for it. They called for it every single time, so it didn't really matter to me. And I would put a Glimmer on them, and I would just keep holy shocking the boss. You will see there that I'm still really not using a lot of GCD's healing. I was at 120k HPS before, and now I'm dropping. My mana is pretty low here, and that's kind of what I just jokingly freaked out about. I didn't want a mana pot. I had a mana pot available, but I didn't want to. And I tried an early spread for this. And the reason you see us all running out is that sometimes you get a Dark Matter here if you don't finish it fast enough. You'll see him casting Dark Matter right now. And if his health was higher, that means you're going to have to do this Dark Matter before you go in. So I early spread for this so that I don't get clipped by it early. And also I will note, because this is something that we had people die to, is that you can see the circles on the left and right of us, and they're the Annihilates. The darker the circle is, the closer it is to exploding. You'll see this one on our left being ready to explode, the one on our right just being dropped off. So when you're making the decision of which side you want to go to when the Dark Matter comes, you want to go to the circle that just blew up. Because if I went to the right here instead of the left, I would have died to the Annihilate damage, right? That happens a couple seconds later after it's dropped off of players. So because I went to the left, I was pretty safe. So once you finish this ad, you're going to want to auto run. The reason that there's just a bug, you'll see, I auto ran towards it. And you'll see where I end up. Instead of ending up right next to the gate, all of our characters stay auto-walking, and I'll end up being positioned right on the boss. I wings instantly here, and the reason is that I can get 2 wings in this phase. So I kind of top everyone off, and I give a stabilized to, for the first Evoke Anguish. This last phase is really not a great Paladin phase, and your main job is just honestly going to be just blasting the boss at the end of the night. At the end of the phase. So we see these beams. I don't like to charge here because I think charge are super valuable. I'll normally just run this way. This was a beam that we wanted to beat, so we just kept running with it. Sometimes you are going to have to stand still. Sometimes you're going to have to go far with it. So I start moving out here because we're getting an Evoke, and I want to try to find like a safe spot early. It is helpful just to plant your feet. Like, you'll see me stop even when other people are moving just to plant my feet so other people know that, hey, this is where this guy's standing. I try to get far here and stay away from people just because of the paranoia. It's not bad to like take a couple ticks of someone or just run over someone real quick. It's the same thing as phase 2. It's that you don't need a shit ton of sanity. You're gonna get MC'd here anyway, so it's okay to lose sanity. So after this, I use Devo again. It's pretty much the exact same cooldowns as in phase 2. So in phase 2, where I used Devo on the third Evoke, we're using Devo again on the third Evoke, but this time in the last phase. In phase 2, we used SLT on the second Evokes. In the last phase, we used SLT again on the second Evokes, and it just lines up that way. So you just really want to mimic your cooldowns from phase 2 to the last phase. So for this Evokes, we get to the back of the room. Like I said, this is one of the main reasons I don't think Paladin is super good in this phase. We're kind of just sitting here, flash lighting and holy lighting. Generally, I like to use my health stone here and my health pot later on in the fight. If I get low here, I might even health pot. I don't know what I decided to do. I saved it. So here's my second immune, which is about 4 minutes after the previous one. This is why I couldn't run Rule of Law. Just make sure you're in the middle of those, not too bad. And because you immune this, you also get to immune this Evoke Anguish. So you don't have to deal with this, which is super nice. And you want to be in a position so that when these beam comes out, you know which side to go to really easily. So I'm keeping my eyes open. I'm checking. I realize it's right on top of me, and it's going left, so I want to move right so that I don't have to deal with it, really. It's better to be like on... So if a beam's going left, you want to be on the right of it, as close to it as possible, right? If it spawns on you and the beam's going left, you want to move right, and vice versa. I probably should have explained that earlier, but... So this wings, I actually think I misplayed. I used it here for healing, which I think I should have used it for damage. It didn't end up mattering because we had so much damage from the cloak upgrades. But you could save this wings right here for damage, because in about like 5-ish seconds you get paranoia. You stack here, and you get you obviously get MC'd, so you get the buffer, increased damage, and you're just sitting there and you nuke the boss. We see that the beam here, this is like one of the hardest or like most RNG parts of the fight, is this beam. This beam could be really good or this beam could be pretty bad. It's really good for us and it's directly on top of us, so our leader gives the call to move left. We all move left, and we don't have to really deal with it. That's like a perfect beam. Now you'll see me just sitting there spamming GCs in the boss, because at this point the only thing that matters is boss damage. We kill it. Overall, I think I'm pretty happy with like where my cooldowns went and how I played with them. Obviously, like, you're not always going to be able to get the most HPS effective cooldowns spots or anything like that. You just got to play with what your guild needs, right? And my guild needed my cooldowns where I used them. That's what felt the best, so that's what I ended up doing with those. Made it this far. Thank you for watching, first of all. Second of all, I do stream pretty much every single raid on Twitch. The link will be in the description. If you're interested in getting my UI, the UI link will also be in the description to like a page spin where you can find all different aspects of it. And I appreciate you guys checking out the video. Hopefully I was able to provide you some information or some insight on how you can play Mythic Inzoth. Thanks for watching.